I want to greet and appreciate my friend John Hope Bryant for all of the amazing intellectual smorgasbord that he has poured out for us to consume. I have joined virtually. It was my intention to be there physically. I apologize, but I had a recent health incident that was a lot more serious than I initially thought that it was, and the doctors are not allowing me to travel as yet. But I was determined to stick my head into this opportunity and greet you and thank all of you that know about it and that have been praying for me. I am on the road to getting better, and your prayers are a part of it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. The, the old adage
We're
that
praying
health
for you,
is the
Bishop.
Thank you, sir. I know you are. I can feel your prayers every day. The old adage that health is the new wealth, it takes on a whole new meaning when yours is challenged.
That's right.
And so I feel blessed and grateful just to be able to join you through this forum and just to greet you, and also to be so thankful that although I couldn't be there, my team is there, and I want all of my team, my executive team members, and the people that make up the TD Jakes group, not the Potter's House, but the TD Jakes group, which is our foundation, which is our real estate ventures, which is our TD Jakes enterprise, to just stand for a moment, and would you just give them a round of applause? I ask you to applaud them because you are no better than the people that you surround yourself with. And although people like me often get the credit, we could not do what we do without the brain trust that we have available to us. And we're grateful for it. Speaking of brain trust, you have a brain trust on this stage that I was blessed with the privilege to handpick, and that I've enjoyed a relationship with for a number of years, to coordinate a powerful discussion that I believe is going to be life changing and informative, and perhaps motivate you to go even further than you have already done and already gone. I sense I cannot be the moderator as I was intended to be, and again, I apologize for that, but I'm doing the best I can. I have in my stead our COO for the TD Jakes Enterprise.
I'm actually glad that he got interrupted. I need him not to talk so much. He needs to stop. I mean, this is beautiful. He was supposed to come on for 1 minute and stop. His doctor told him to moderate. That don't sound moderate. Look, there's so much I can't tell you, but I was on the phone with Michael Phillips when this went down. When he went to the hospital, he was at the hospital the next morning. I can't say, but I'm just telling you, it's a modern miracle. What you just saw is a modern miracle. That's God, ain't nothing but God saying, your job's not done yet. Amen. And so anyway, God bless you. Thank you, Bishop, in absentia.
Thank you, John. Well, since we lost Bishop for a second, and I think it's actually really fitting because I know he's still watching because he watches everything. I think it's fitting that we really reflect and represent to him his importance to us and the influence and impact he has had probably on most of our lives. If this man has touched you, inspired you, motivated you, encouraged you in any way, can you just for 30 seconds take the roof off this place? And let's thank God for Bishop T.D. Jakes. We love you, Bishop. Yeah. Come on, let him feel it. Let him feel it. Yeah. So as Bishop already articulated, we have an amazing brain trust with us today to dive deep on the subject of the beloved community. And when we talk about building a world where all people can thrive, where there is truly justice for all, when we come into forums like this that our host has so graciously put together all of this amazing content from thought leaders from all over the world for us to be inspired and to think about how we can make the world a better place. There's no better group of people that is assembled on this platform today to talk about the beloved community. And since we are honored and graced to have Dr. Bernice King with us today, yes. And since my mama is probably watching, I'm gonna say ladies first and ask you, your father popularized the term beloved community. What was his hopes and aspirations as he aspired to bring us into that place?
Well, I didn't have a personal conversation with him. Just so everybody knows, a gentleman, a philosopher, American philosopher, and American philosopher, Josiah Royce is the person who coined the phrase beloved community. For him, it was an ideal. And so when my father came along, and obviously my father was very studious and studied a lot of philosophers and theologians, so came across this notion of the beloved community. He popularized it because in his first speech to the Montgomery Improvement Association for the bus boycott, he talked about the aftermath of nonviolence being redemption, reconciliation, and creation of the beloved community. For my father, it was not aspirational. It was aspirational for Josiah. For my father, it was a realistic vision because he felt that nonviolence was the means to achieve this inclusive human community that through love manifests in justice, equality, freedom, and peace. But there's a recognition in the beloved community of the sacredness of all human persons and a respect and for the dignity and worth of every person. And that respect has to manifest itself in our systems and structures. And there's an acknowledgement that there's an interrelatedness and interdependence to all human life. And so the acknowledgement of the sacredness of the human personality connected with this love manifesting in justice, peace, freedom, and equality was a part of his vision, but many people now use it as a term but don't understand. For my daddy, it meant that you had to study, embrace, practice nonviolence to get to that beloved community.
Wow. Given that we are where we are in such a polarized society, how close or how far are we to that idea?
It depends on who the person is. I think collectively we're still struggling. I think part of it is that we've become more materially focused than we have become spiritually focused. And what I mean by that is that we are the highest form of God's creation, and we have a capacity to elevate past what's happening right before us and to create a different dynamic. So when you look at the polarization that currently exists, there's a tendency for us to operate from a lower level and to try to get into the mix of all of that rather than to transcend it and try to pull people in. They call people out. When you have a beloved community mindset, a love-centered mindset, focused on the end of reconciliation and creating an atmosphere of justice, freedom, equality, and peace, you don't call people out, you call people in and you call them up.
Love that. Oh my God, I love that. That's amazing. You don't call people out, you call them in and you call them up.
Right.
Speaking of calling people up and calling people in, Dr. A.R. Bernard, you have had a legacy of work that have done that in multiple levels. You stand at the intersection of ministry and marketplace. You've developed communities. How important is it to have faith leaders as a central part to building the beloved community?
Oh, my goodness. First, let me say that our prayers continue for Bishop Jakes. We're glad to hear that he's recovering and doing well. He plays a very, very important role in social discourse and political discourse as well, not just spiritually, in our society. So we're grateful, and we continue to pray for him. I just want to say that publicly. Bishop asked me to respond within a historical framework. I'll try to do that in a minute. Let me take it here. This decade, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Harlem Renaissance, which emerged in the 1920s. A collection of gifted Black thought leaders, writers, artists, and creatives convened to both react to the systemic inequities that were present in our nation 100 years ago, and to proactively shape a new Black identity. They were inspired by the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North, looking for better economics, better quality of life. They were inspired by the war, World War I, in that African Americans felt that if they fought in the war for this country, it will show their loyalty, their passion for this country, and hopefully lead to greater civil rights. That was their optimism. The frustration was that what it actually led to was greater discrimination, greater segregation, and the resurgence of white supremacist violence, including lynching and racial riots. But it didn't stop them from thinking, because they began to turn inwardly to their own community. And I think that's important, because as we look back 100 years, it's amazing how parallel then was to now. Yeah. We had a Spanish flu pandemic, killed 675,000 American people. Wow. We had the Red Scare, which led to the 1924 Immigration Act, where Eastern Europeans were reduced in terms of coming into the United States, and of course the ban of Asian Americans. We had the Red Summer of racial riots across the country. We had the KKK marching down Washington, parading in regalia, and then meeting with President Harding, as part of America and American history. We had a radical conservative shift in the social and political landscape. We had presidents who decided that they were going to engage in isolationism policy, which of course had international impact, because removing ourselves from an international landscape created vacuums that were later filled with totalitarian, nationalistic regimes that led to World War II. Tariffs were placed in the United States, and of course, other nations reacted, which began to influence the global market. And I can go on, but the interesting thing is, and what we need to look at is, in the midst of all of that was happening, right? We had unprecedented economic boom and cultural innovation. Wow. And the Harlem Renaissance was part of that cultural innovation, because either change will lead us or we will lead change. And as I said, history doesn't repeat itself, people do. Right. So how could we observe what's happening today that mirrors 100 years ago and take advantage of what accompanied what was happening 100 years ago and is now happening today. I'm excited about the possibilities. So when we think about the beloved community that Dr. King spoke of, back then there was a tension because there were those who agreed with it because he was basing it on integration and a theological framework on the humanity of all individuals in the image of God. But then there were individuals, like in my neighborhood, we leaned to, which was Malcolm, who was saying, no, there has to be segregation. We have to develop our own. And I think what we realize along the way is that there has to be a both and solution. We deal with the personal transformation of the individual, but we also have to deal with the transformation of communities, and we have to deal with the systemic problems that perpetuate our marginalization within American society.
Yes, love that, love that. Yes. So speaking of the opportunity that's in front of us to actually take advantage of the history that we have, whether we view it as good or bad, you see it as an opportunity to learn and to grow from what we have done so that we can get to a more deepened community rather than having a shallow form of community or a fear-based community where oftentimes most people assemble around something that they are afraid of or something that they just don't want to deal with. But what you're suggesting is that we have the opportunity to have a more deepened community. We have with us the president of Lazard, Ray McGuire, and I'm curious as to your thoughts. What does that look like economically? How do we intentionally learn from past behavior, past thoughts, past circumstances to a more brightful, more hopeful future of an inclusive economy?
So first of all, thank you for having me. I clearly am a member of the beloved community. I fell a little off my game, though. You have on blue shoes. She's got on green shoes. And the Reverend's got the highest end of hush puppies I've ever seen. I got some custom stuff, but it looks like I'm still off my game. So. We have gotten a brief sermon, thank you. We've gotten a history lesson. I'm reminded of what King said in that letter. We are tied in an inescapable garment of destiny. What affects one affects all. And if I think about that, and I think about the history lesson here, and I think about the examples that we've had where we've seized the opportunity, the examples reside in the public figures who partnered with the private sector. And we know them all. We know of Andrew Young, and we know of Marion Barry, and we know of Harold Washington, and we know of Maynard Young, and we know of all the advances that took place under their leadership. The question becomes today, I got 600 and some odd mayors representing 48 million people, 4 of whom are running the largest cities in the country. Where is the opportunity and how do we seize that opportunity? I have, for the past 40 years, been in the middle of the money game, so I understand how capital flows, not only locally, nationally, but globally. If I look at the dollars available, if we leverage our public platforms to benefit the beloved community, they are enormous. And so the opportunity exists. We need to start at the foundational level, as has been referenced in the first forum here, and that is education. We need to invest in education. What do I mean by that? If I look at black and brown boys and girls between the 3rd and 8th grade, 7 to 8 out of 10 are below proficient. Below proficient, it doesn't poll, and therefore leadership doesn't seem to be so focused on that. And why do I reference that? Because that then becomes a pipeline that gets us to the HBCUs so that we can graduate in less than 6 years and get the funding for those programs so that we get the opportunity to get the education. So I look at the landscape, informed and inspired by history, to say we have made progress. We seem to perhaps have stalled a bit, notwithstanding our leadership positions. We have not returned to the foundation, which you referenced, which was the church. And it doesn't appear to me that we have learned the lessons that we knew historically that advanced us in every material category in which we advanced under that leadership: education, housing, healthcare, economics. And if I look at where we are today relative to where we've been historically, I'm going to be generous and say we have enormous opportunities to replicate and even better going forward than the riches that we were able to generate historically. So the examples are there in our community, faith-based, public, private. And if we just listen to and learn from those examples, the ability for our best days to be ahead of us as opposed to behind us are enormous.
Wow, wow, amen to that. Speaking of, yes. Speaking of public-private partnerships and innovation, I was going to talk to us a little bit about, or ask a question or propose a question about the advances of technology and how it can be used to help to buoy and influence a beloved community. But just for a second, I think we need to take a moment and congratulate and celebrate our host, John Hope Bryant, for creating the AIPL. Yeah. That is absolute, oh, come on, y'all. An artificial intelligence pipeline? Amazing, amazing, amazing. What role do you see technology playing in helping us to shape, or not, a more beloved community?
Me?
Anyone.
I think that needs to go to someone else.
I was trying to figure out who was looking at me.
You were looking at me?
I was trying to figure out who he was talking to.
Yeah.
So let me take a stab at it. You heard some of the statistics cited by John Hope Bryant when it comes to the investment in artificial intelligence. And we look at some of the colleges and universities that have been focused on STEM. We're now advanced beyond that, meaning that it used to be that if you were in engineering, you could code, that was the future. Today, you see a lot of that being dislocated by generative AI. What will not be dislocated by generative AI, about which we're not talking, is that in generative AI, we're going to need two fundamental things about which none of us are talking, about which there is enormous opportunity to have a foundational wealth: plumbers and electricians. I guarantee you today, in what is not known, in order for generative AI to exist, you need water, you need electricity. And then you need to retrofit the power and electrical grid in order for people to be able to access it. The things which we take for granted until we don't. When your water goes out, who do you call? Now, I know some of us have gone to Sears. It used to go to Sears and think we can do the handyman move, but the water goes out and there's a leak, you got to call a plumber. Lights go out, you have no idea where the box is and how to fix it. Generative AI at a foundational level will make certain that those opportunities exist. Now, when it gets to dispossession or dislocation of human talent, that will happen at the most fundamental level. It used to be the case that we went through toll booths, we had people there who would give us tickets on one end, and then we exited, we'd have tickets on the other end. Today, that is all gone. You got a tag that says Easy Pass, and you can go through the fast lane and go through the tolls with zero human interaction. There will be other examples like that. Having said that, the more we invest in understanding and the more we educate the next generation who are digital natives as opposed to people like me who are digital immigrants, we can figure out how we exist here. The other is in generative AI. All of us, guarantee everybody in here has one of these machines. Everybody. Now, what will happen is the ability to access this and manage our lives in a more succinct manner than what we do today will exist on this. And so we have to figure out as a community, which is why the thoughtfulness behind the movement in generative AI that John Hope Bryant and others talked about at the initial forum, that thoughtfulness is something that we need to embrace. Get invested intellectually, educationally in generative AI, because otherwise it will move you, it will displace you in ways that we've not seen before. There's never been a moment in history where you've seen technology and the advent of technology have such a profound impact on how we think about ourselves and how we interact with each other.
I'd like to affirm what my brother Ray McGuire is saying, because we shovels in the ground in April, and we're working on the first 4 buildings, which is part of a $1.2 billion development project in Brooklyn. We're developing 10.5 acres. We're bringing 2,000 units of mixed income affordable housing, 130,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, 24-hour child care, which is a new incentive nationally. It's one of the largest program developments in the country. And what we found was just that, this whole body of individuals who are ripe to be HVAC carpenters, plumbers, and electricians across the country. So everywhere you go in these cities, you see all of these skyscrapers going up, you see all of these cranes active. But the question is, who is running these things? So what we did was add a trade school to the entire development program, and we're building it in such a way, I'm gonna date myself here, but we used to have shop when I was in high school. And you could go to carpentry, you could go to electrical shop, you know, and doing it in that fashion, so the space is going to be industrial space that will house situations where each can actually engage hands-on in the work itself. We, as people of color, coming out of a period of a $34 billion crime bill that affected us and our black men negatively, who are coming out of prison and trying to go back into society, they currently need things like this to help them assimilate back into society in a helpful way. So these are the kind of things that I think we need to do and engage in.
Let me just pause on that, just to amplify that. $1.2 billion, 10 acres. The magnitude of that that's exemplary. And it doesn't happen across the board. You, the faith-based community, public-private partnerships, you're an example of that. And the more we can replicate that kind of best in class across the country, the more we elevate our population, the beloved community.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yes. Go ahead, Dr.
No
King.
problem. I want to take a stab at it from this angle. AI doesn't have a soul or a spirit. We do.
Yes.
It can help us if we are where we need to be spiritually, morally, and ethically. That's why I think the AI Ethics Council that John started, that I'm a part of, is so critical. Because one of the things my father cautioned us of in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos, Community in his World House, he talked about how technology and science had advanced us to a place where we have this wonderful connectivity, neighborhood-like connectivity. But where we have failed is we have not learned how to live together as brothers and sisters. And he went on to say, if we don't, we will be forced to perish together as fools. And he talked about how there's this great chasm that creates this problem of learning how to live or perish between technological advancement, ethical and moral advancement. So as technology is advancing, if we ourselves don't take deep introspection at who we are, how we see each other, how we relate to each other, how we live together, because we are still humankind. He said if we don't keep pace and help to bridge that chasm, we will destroy ourselves in the very misuse of those instruments.
Wow. Wow.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. So, in our closing thoughts, and this is for the whole panel to think about, to respond to, that type of intentionality around making sure our hearts, our souls, our minds keep pace with the current trends and transformational ways technology is changing our lives. If we're not doing it the same way, given that, here's the question, given that communities at times are not always formed intentionally.
Right.
Sometimes they are, and oftentimes they are formed because of unpredictable events, such as COVID, or historically, like the Civil Rights Movement. Some catastrophe or some crisis that forces people to have a shared intersection. How can we intentionally build beloved community without having a crisis, but rather having the opportunity to see the benefit that we are stronger together than we are apart?
Well, I think it takes leadership. You know, everything that we have seen that has progressed our world has come through leadership, and leadership with a critical mass of people. It's not everyone. The movement, contrary to what people saw on August 28th, 1963, was not that many people, 250,000 or more people. The movement was a core group of people who had that intentionality, that commitment, and that practice of nonviolence, who helped to move the needle, and it influenced. So I think it really starts with people who have the courage in the midst of the status quo to stand out in that way and to combine and coordinate efforts, because there's a thing called Kairos moments. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So while we are creating the momentum with this collective, what we always fail to realize, as brilliant as we are as humankind, innovative as we are, productive as we are, there is still a God factor in this universe. And he is going to intercept, intervene, and connect to our efforts. And if we just believe that, that's what this whole principle of nonviolence, the sixth principle, is about. The belief that the universe, and those who are more religious, that God is on the side of justice. When you have that belief, you move in sync with that, knowing that your efforts combined with the collective, at some point there will be a connectivity, and it will move us into that next stage of true progression.
Yeah, love that, love that. Dr. Bernard?
I'll refer back to our project. It's based upon a particular philosophy. You can Google Innovative Urban Village. Throughout American history, we've responded especially to underserved populations, primarily people of color, by providing housing that actually warehouses one income band. So when you do that, you have at its inception, at the ribbon cutting, the social problems that will develop over time within that scenario. We wanted to change the idea that in underserved communities across the country, the way up is out. We in New York City, because of the high rent costs, we're losing a generation of millennials who have experienced unprecedented education. You're talking about 85 million millennials in this country who have not been able to translate that economically like the baby boomer generation or the following generation after the baby boomer generation, Gen X, I think. So they're moving, they're leaving. So we're losing that intellectual, creative capital that we want to keep there. So we want to change the narrative and say the way up is not out, the way up is to stay. Be a part of the community, but you've got to give them something to stay for. So that's why our mixed income goes from 30% AMI all the way up to 100% AMI. So you could make $100,000 and have an affordable place to live. We also built in 120 units of home ownership. So it creates upward mobility within the community itself. And our philosophy is based on four things. We're talking about environment, an environment that's going to be a quality of life that people love and want to be a part of. And that cuts down on the need for policing because the community polices itself. All of the stakeholders come into play. So you're talking about environment, people, creating an environment where people are in mind and their best needs. Also programming that serves those people. And most importantly for us, sustainability. So we don't build it today and in 10 years it's dilapidated and then we're on the news as, you know, part of the history of this. So we build those things into it. So we have to approach it differently in terms of how we think through these things.
So let me end where I begin. Often when I get asked how I got here, I say there are four things: prayer, preparation, performance, and paranoia. And let me end and begin on the first one. I guarantee you there's one place, and maybe only one place, that every person in this audience has attended. And that's church. And why do I say that? Because I think the foundation through the history that has been cited here, the foundation in what you referenced, the foundation on which we all stand is a faith-based foundation. Faith-based community, faith-based leaders have forged the future for us historically. there remains the opportunity for that leadership. And what you're doing, Dr. Bernard, and the values for which you stand and what you talk about, the necessity to have moral involvement in generative AI is essential. So look at the baseline from which we can never escape, especially in the beloved community, and ask, is that foundation solid? Do we have the leadership? Is the leadership leading the way it's been anointed to lead? Right. If the answer to that is yes, then we give unto Caesar what's Caesar's and give unto God what's God's. And we move forward as a beloved community. If the answer to that is no, then you're going to have to answer to your maker at some point in time. The community will not have realized its potential, and our best days will reside in history and not in the future.
Amen to that. Amen to that, yes. As we wrap up, I'll add this final thought. I believe this is why Bishop Jakes wanted to have this thought-provoking panel. Similarly, we're doing a lot of the same work across the country in building communities through our real estate ventures. I know our real estate team is here as well, through our foundation, and of course through our enterprise, which is a social impact holding company. You all give us hope in what you do, the work that you do, the legacy that you have created. You give us hope. And I believe that hope is the heartbeat of every thriving community. It is the rhythm that keeps us moving forward when the road gets tough. It is the thing that helps us to say to ourselves, hold on, better days are coming. And I strongly and firmly believe that better days are coming. Yes. The theme of this conference was the future. The future is a blank page. Hope gives us the ink to write whatever we want. So I hope and pray from this thought-provoking panel that you take that hope and that courage to build community wherever you are. Can we thank this amazing panel for being with us today? And thank John Hope Bryant.